Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate, and today I'm going to be talking to you about The Bonehunters, which is the sixth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'll just be talking about the first half of the book, so nothing past that point. I haven't read anything past the first half, which is just the first two sections of the book. I'll be doing a non-spoiler discussion first, and then moving on to a spoiler-filled discussion later. That will probably be longer. I don't know how long this video will be, but we're just going with it. And it'll be time stamped down below, so you'll know. So this is the sixth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. What is it about? I know at this point I'm 6 books in, and I'm asking this question to people who are probably a little confused. It's like, Nate, like we all know what Malazan is about at this point. But I also liked watching some discussion videos around later books in some series, like Malazan, for example. I don't know why I did that, but I appreciated the non-spoilers. So we're just going to start with that. So I was going to go off the description of the book provided by the book itself, but it was a little spoiler-filled for previous books, so I just don't want to read that off. So I'll just kind of give my own version of it, which will not be great, but here we are. So we're 6 books deep at this point. Not sure if that's a coincidence or not, but this book picks up right after the events of House of Chains, which is the 4th book. We are following the 14th Army of the Malazan Empire. We follow other characters like Karsa Orlong and Cutter and Haboric and some other characters that have appeared throughout the series. This really just kind of goes through the after effects of House of Chains and is starting to explore towards the latter half Midnight Tides, because Midnight, or the events that follow Midnight Tides, because Midnight Tides takes place before the first book. So yeah, we're just kind of beginning to see that the plot and the effects and the story from the 5th book kind of start to come into play in this book, just a little. It's just kind of hints here and there. We also get to see some new characters, maybe not new to the series, but new perspectives. And one of them is Apsalar, who is turning into one of my favorite characters. She is a character that has been around since the 1st book and has sort of appeared in these everything except Memories of Ice, I believe, and Midnight Tides, but we're finally getting her own point of view, and I am enjoying it so much so far. I really love just getting to see what she's going through and understand what she's going through, because you don't really see that too much internally. Like, you don't see it internally at all in the previous books. You just kind of get the external perspective of what's happening to her and what she's going through and how she's feeling and stuff like that. And just to kind of go over plot for a minute, I really do like the plot so far. It's a little it's just a little different. It's kind of hard to come off, I think, 3 for me personally. I mean, I really like all of them so far, but I think book number 3, 4, and 5 are just thematically and in terms of execution, like some of the best writing I've seen, and some of the best books I've ever read. So I think to kind of come off of that, it's a little bit difficult and kind of start fresh in its own way, but you're kind of going back to some characters that you don't really know that well, or you kind of got bits and pieces of. But so far, I really do like the book. It's not my favorite so far. I just kind of want something more from it. It's hovering around like 4.5, 4.25, which I know is high, but it's kind of, I think there'll be somebody else has said this, but what do they call it? Malaz Lanch, like they call a Sander Lanch, like a huge events occurring at the end of the book that just tie it all up, and you're like, oh my god, I think that's going to happen in this book, I'd imagine. So plotting's okay, story's okay, I like it so far. Characters are good thematically. It's kind of still coming to me a bit, but I do think there are themes of just sort of, I don't know if history is a theme, but I think being on the continent they're on, it's this very historic, there's a lot of depth and layers literally to this continent and what happens there and what has happened there. And that's just become a very important theme through the books that have happened on the seven continents, or the seven cities continent. Um, you really feel that they're not even necessarily always like, nothing maybe is happening sometimes, but with those areas that we explore, but he just writes it in a very, interesting way. Like, he makes it all very interesting, even if nothing's happening with it. If it doesn't serve maybe a plot, it kind of serves these themes of belief and structures of power, and whether that's religion or government or just human civilization. It kind of really just hits home at that, and it's maybe not the most interesting thing to explore, but I'm a historian, or I like history, I guess I should say. I'm an armchair historian. I did study it in college. I really just find that interesting, especially with his sort of archaeological background and everything like that. I think it's just kind of a unique eye into what he finds interesting in a book, and I find it interesting too. So if you're starting to read the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I hear some people say the Bonehunters isn't that good. It kind of falls off after book 5 or something. It's all over the place, but I really like it so far, the Bonehunters. Again, it's not my favorite thing in the world right now, but I'm really enjoying it, and I go through, spurts with these books, but I really like the story, the characters, the themes. I like these new perspectives. I have my issues with it so far, but they're very reserved and not, glaring. It's just maybe very small personal choices. So if you want to read it, I definitely recommend it, and don't be intimidated. It's definitely a longer book. I think it's a few hundred pages longer maybe than Midnight Tides, but I should finish this up in a few weeks, hopefully. But it's really good, and read Malazan. Now, just to go into some spoilers. So I first just want to talk about Apsalar. I really like her, being with these two demons who are, or not demons, but these Tistiandi ghosts, and they're possessing these bodies. So that duo is really funny and hilarious. I think the humor in this book so far has been a little bit more reserved than in Midnight Tides, but I really appreciate that. Although I really loved, forgetting their names, there's so many names in these books. Let me look at my notes. Tehol and Bug, those are the two. Although I really loved that whole storyline, at times it felt a little absurd, or rather too absurd at times. I think, although it was sort of a Shakespearean experience, I just thought sometimes it took away from the emotional impact of the previous chapter and didn't sit on that for a minute. So far, they've been great in this book. Apsalar's been awesome. Karsa Orlong just hitting it with the blunt statements, and I'm here for it. When he was talking to Samartav about her inventions, and he asks her what the telescope is. She's like, oh, it's a telescope. It's like, what's it used for? And she says, oh, so you can see people from another hill far away. And he's like, if I wanted to see them, I would just go ride to them. And it's just sort of like, what's the point of these inventions? These are just impractical, it defeats the purpose. And he just kind of calls her out for why are these inventions just sitting here if they're so useful? And I just really love that about Karsa. He's very blunt and direct, and just this image of him sitting, this giant hulking person sitting in this room looking at all these inventions, or this map on the floor, and she walks in and sees that, and I laughed at that. That was really great to read. And speaking of sort of the non-Malazan characters, Mappo and Akarium, I really want to reread those sections from Dead House Gates, and maybe if they're in House of Chains, I don't really remember, because I feel like there's a lot I'm missing, but I really love reading their sections. They're this sort of this duo that's been walking and around for hundreds, thousands of years, and Mappo's job is to sort of protect Akarium from discovering who he is, and that's sort of tragic in itself because he has to explore all these same places that they've been to before, and he kind of has to like nudge him in the right direction every time. Just sort of knowing the impact of that in terms of why it's important to have Akarium not know who he is. Like, I know that what all these things that he's done are horrible, but I just don't really not see the full gravity, but I think grasp the potential of it all. Like, I know he's now being guarded by one of the Nameless Ones, which kind of put him there in the first place. Did Mappo fail his job? I think was the point. I just want to reread those sections for sure and like kind of revisit that duo because there's a lot going on there. So I know there's more like non-Malazan Empire characters, but I do kind of want to move on to Cotillion, the Rope, whatever you want to call him. I really am surprised by him. He was a character that I thought was maybe similar to Shadow Throne in kind of this just like jerk, like asshole. Like, I know he possessed or kind of embodied Apsalar, and I always felt that was like not a great thing to do, but in House of Chains you kind of see a little bit more of him, but especially in this book you really see some of his intentions. Like, I really feel like he not truly cares, but he just cares about the gravity of it all and the situation, and he really wants what's best, and he's trying to balance everything. He's trying to play by the rules, I believe, of the deck of dragons, but I'm just not sure sort of if all of his intentions are good. There's a lot going on with him, and understandably so. He is a god, so I can imagine there's a lot of shit going on in his head. And especially interacting with Apsalar now, he kind of sends her on these missions to assassinate people, beyond going on to that in a sec. So, I'm not sure, like, it seems like his intentions are good with this all, and I'm not sure how to, sort of take it. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with him, and I like reading when he's around. I think he's just an interesting character because you sort of hear so much about him and Shadow Throne, and you just kind of want to know more about them. And like, I read Night of Knives and what happened in that, but you still just don't really get everything from them, and maybe I never will. But I do find them interesting, especially Cotillion. Oh, just back onto Apsalar, like I mentioned. Is she who's she gonna assassinate? I think it's gonna be, or at least attempt to assassinate. Who, man? I think it was in my head. I was thinking, well, Quickben, because Shadow Throne seems to hate Quickben. I think, or maybe that was Hood. I don't remember. But I think he's somebody that the Realm of Darkness, the Warren of Darkness, or whoever, they don't like him. And I think he's the one that's going to be assassinated. Or it will be Stormy. And Stormy is an interesting character. Like, that's another section of people I would like to reread. Yeah, just going on that sort of that trio. Truth, Dying, that was pretty hard. The whole siege of Egatan, that was definitely a subversion of what I was expecting. I was expecting a drawn out siege, a bloody, sort of in your face sort of siege, and it was in some ways, but this was difficult to read at times because you definitely, in terms of his writing, you really feel trapped in that city with them as flames are rising everywhere and nobody knows what's going on. The rebellion is sort of fighting to the death while the leader fled. You know, you really just feel for everyone in that city. And, you know, you just feel like there's no oxygen left. It's very tight. It's very claustrophobic. It's just he writes these scenes so well, and especially when they're in the tunnels later, those 20 or so are escaping. When Bottle goes down the tunnel or this shaft and runs into all these hungry spiders who are pissed off. I had to skip that section because that made my skin crawl. That writing was so good. And it was like 100 pages long, this chapter. And it was just all this siege. And I was like, holy shit. I mean, it's long, but it's really good. And it's kind of it's written very quick. There's a lot of, it's a very fast-paced sort of section, I would say. There's a lot of sort of shorter paragraphs that sort of jump around between perspectives of this sort of shit show of a siege. And now there's this plague coming in from the east to potentially destroy the 14th Army, and they're retreating, and these 20 or so have been left behind, and there's sort of this like, oh, I thought they wouldn't leave us behind, but now they are, just kind of going into that theme of belief, and especially with the guy who is in the rebellion, and he kind of has his own sort of ideas of what the rebellion is, shattered by Leomin, and he has this great belief in him, but the siege happens and all that is burned to the ground, literally and figuratively burned to the ground. So yeah, there's just a lot of theme of just lack of belief anymore. Now the 14th Army and purpose. The 14th Army doesn't really have a purpose now besides trying to just survive this plague. It's just like, that's a very heavy theme in this book, as well as the theme of history. Like the tunnels, as I discussed before. There's just a lot of depth to this world and this continent and what's happening. I want to touch on so many things, but it's really hard to sum it all up. Just to kind of go over two more things, maybe. I really love Perrin's sections. I am so, I didn't really appreciate him that much in the first two books with him, but now I really like that he's the master of the deck, and he kind of has this sort of magical powers going on, and sort of this journey with the Jagcut woman, sort of sorcerer woman. That's really cool, and with the Shrigali Trade Guild and that whole going through these warrens together and just seeing how messed up it all is. That was really interesting to read. Yeah, and then coming back to the bridge burners who have died and ascended. I still don't really know. Yeah, I didn't really see that. I don't know why I didn't see that in the fourth book, but I guess that's what happened. So they all came back, and he interacts with Hedge and a few others, and they're kind of explaining what happened, but it's not really clear. And then they go into this warren and free these like hounds, the sort of precursor to the Hounds of Shadow. Yeah, that whole section was just sort of trippy, but this book has been really good. I know I missed a lot. I don't want to ramble on for too long. I feel like I'm just going. So I really enjoy this book so far. I want to see more from it, but I'm excited for the second half. I love this series so far. I'm definitely going to finish it. So thanks for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you want. And I will talk to you soon.